The soft hum of the air conditioner was the only sound in the dimly lit room as Kevin sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen. The grainy video file head just received from the private investigator was paused, the timestamp frozen in the corner. His hands hovered over the keyboard, his chest tightening with a mix of dread and fury. Kevin knew that once he hit play, there would be no turning back. His wife, Rachel, had been acting distant for months, her smiles more practiced, her excuses growing thinner. Late nights at work, sudden gym memberships, and a new obsession with her appearance had set off alarm bells. Kevin, a software engineer who prided himself on logical thinking, had initially dismissed his suspicions as paranoia. But then, he stumbled upon a text on her phone, just a single line. "Can't wait to see you again tonight." The message was from an unsaved number. That night, Kevin had confronted Rachel. She brushed it off, laughing nervously and blaming a friend's prank. But the doubt had already taken root. It didn't help that Rachel had quickly deleted the message and changed the subject. Kevin knew then that he needed answers, and so he'd hired a private investigator. Now, as he sat there with the proof in front of him, the air in the room felt suffocating. He hit play. The evidence, the footage, began with shaky camera work as the private investigator panned across a nondescript hotel hallway. Kevin recognized it instantly. He had dropped Rachel off at a business meeting just 2 days earlier. The camera zoomed in on the door, and moments later, Rachel emerged, laughing softly. She wasn't alone. The man with her was tall, broad-shouldered, and had an air of cocky confidence. His arm rested casually around Rachel's waist as they walked toward the elevator. Kevin's stomach churned as he watched Rachel lean into him, her face illuminated by a smile Kevin hadn't seen in months. The PI had followed them discreetly, capturing the couple entering a nearby restaurant, sharing a bottle of wine, and laughing like teenagers. Kevin clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. But what came next was the real gut punch. A familiar face as the couple exited the restaurant and headed toward a parked car. The camera panned in for a closer look at the man's face. Kevin froze. He hit pause, his heart pounding in his chest. The man wasn't a stranger. It was Jacob, his cousin. Kevin's mind reeled. Memories of family barbecues, childhood summers, and shared jokes came flooding back. Jacob, who had once been like a brother to him. Jacob, who had been a groomsman at their wedding. The betrayal burned hotter now, and Kevin felt the weight of his discovery pressing down on him. His breath quickened, and he pushed back from the desk, pacing the room. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a personal, calculated betrayal from two people he had trusted the most. The confrontation Kevin needed more than the footage. He needed undeniable proof. Something that neither Rachel nor Jacob could deny. Gritting his teeth, he grabbed his phone and opened the home security app. He had installed cameras throughout the house years ago for safety reasons, but now they would serve a darker purpose. He scanned through the recent footage, focusing on the nights when Rachel had claimed to be working late. His stomach churned as he found what he was looking for. The camera in the living room showed Rachel, dressed up in her best, laughing with Jacob. It wasn't just one visit, it was several. In one clip, Jacob had even lingered, touching her cheek tenderly before leaving. Kevin felt his blood boil. They weren't just sneaking around. They were brazenly using his own home as their playground. That night, Kevin couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Rachel's deceitful smile and Jacob's smug face. He knew he couldn't confront them yet. He needed a plan. The trap the next morning, Kevin acted as if nothing was wrong. He kissed Rachel goodbye before she left for work, his stomach turning as she smiled back at him. He then spent the day meticulously preparing. He set up hidden cameras in the living room and bedroom, ensuring he would capture everything the next time Jacob visited. When Rachel texted him that afternoon to say she'd be working late again, Kevin's jaw tightened. He didn't respond. Instead, he drove to a nearby motel, parking his car far out of sight. From there, he logged into his security feed on his laptop, watching as Rachel returned home and, not long after, Jacob arrived. The cameras captured it all. Their laughter, their whispered conversation, and eventually, their embrace. Kevin's hands trembled as he watched, but he refused to let his anger cloud his judgment. This was just the beginning. A storm brewing as Kevin sat in the motel room, staring at the incriminating footage. His mind raced with possibilities. He wasn't just going to confront them, he was going to expose them. But how far would he go? For now, he would bide his time. After all, revenge was a dish best served cold. Kevin spent the next few days orchestrating his revenge with meticulous precision. Every step of his plan had to be airtight. No loopholes, no chance for Rachel or Jacob to wriggle out of what they had done. He was fueled by a mix of heartbreak, rage, and a deep need to reclaim control over the life they had derailed. The first phase of Kevin's plan was to gather undeniable evidence. Armed with the video footage from both the private investigator and his home security cameras, he compiled a file that painted a damning picture of their betrayal. Every smirk, every lingering touch, and every kiss was documented with timestamps and screenshots. But this wasn't just about revenge. It was about ensuring that Rachel and Jacob couldn't manipulate the narrative. Kevin wanted to make sure that when the truth came out, there would be no room for denial. Setting the stage, Kevin's next move was to create the perfect opportunity to confront them. He decided to host a dinner at their home, inviting close friends and family, including Jacob. He wanted an audience, a group of people who could witness the truth and hold Rachel and Jacob accountable. Rachel, oblivious to Kevin's brewing storm, was thrilled by the idea of hosting a gathering. She eagerly planned the menu and decorations, texting Kevin pictures of centerpieces and wine pairings as if everything in their marriage was perfectly normal. Kevin played along, masking his contempt with feigned enthusiasm. The night of the dinner arrived, and the Peterson house was abuzz with laughter and conversation. Kevin greeted guests at the door, shaking hands and making small talk, all the while scanning the room for Jacob. When Jacob finally arrived, Rachel's face lit up in a way that made Kevin's stomach churn. Jacob greeted her with a warm hug, and Kevin noticed the way Rachel's hand lingered on his arm for a moment too long. The audacity of it all made Kevin's resolve harden. The bombshell dinner was served, and as the group settled into their seats, Kevin stood to make a toast. Raising his glass, he addressed the room with a calm but commanding voice. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he began. "Family and friends mean the world to me, and it's moments like these that remind us how important honesty and loyalty are." Rachel shot him a puzzled glance, sensing a shift in his tone. "Speaking of loyalty," Kevin continued, his eyes locking onto Jacob, "I think it's time we address the elephant in the room." The atmosphere grew tense as conversations trailed off, and all eyes turned to Kevin. He reached for the tablet he had placed discreetly on the side table. "I've been holding on to something for a while now," he said, swiping through the screen, "and I think tonight is the perfect time to share it." Rachel's face went pale as Kevin tapped the play button. The room filled with the sound of muffled laughter and hushed whispers. On the screen, the video footage from Kevin's home security camera began to play. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Rachel and Jacob appeared on the screen, their betrayal unfolding in real time. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the group, and Rachel's hands flew to her mouth as she realized what was happening. Jacob tried to speak, but Kevin silenced him with a raised hand. "Don't even try to explain," Kevin snapped. "The proof is right there." The fallout, the room erupted into chaos. Some guests yelled at Jacob, others stared at Rachel in disbelief, and a few sat frozen in shock. Rachel's attempts to defend herself were drowned out by the noise. "Kevin, please, let's talk about this in private," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, now you want privacy?" Kevin shot back, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You didn't seem to care about privacy when you were sneaking around in my own home." Jacob, his bravado shattered, tried to leave, but Kevin blocked his path. "You're not going anywhere," Kevin said coldly. "Not until you face what you've done." The evening spiraled into a spectacle that left no room for reconciliation. Rachel and Jacob were exposed, humiliated in front of everyone they knew. The aftermath, once the dust settled and the guests had left, Rachel stood in the living room, Her makeup smeared and her shoulders slumped. "Kevin, I'm sorry," she whispered. "I made a mistake." Kevin stared at her, his expression unreadable. "You made a choice," he said, "and now you're going to face the consequences." He handed her an envelope, divorce papers. Rachel's hands trembled as she opened it. "You can't be serious," she said, her voice breaking. "I've never been more serious," Kevin replied. "You betrayed me, Rachel. There's no coming back from that." As Rachel collapsed onto the couch, sobbing, Kevin turned and walked out of the room. For the first time in months, he felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. Kevin's resolve to move forward strengthened with each passing day. After delivering the divorce papers, he set his sights on the next phase of his plan. It wasn't enough for Rachel and Jacob to feel humiliated in the moment. Kevin wanted them to understand the weight of their betrayal. He also wanted to ensure his own life was free from their toxicity, creating a space where he could rebuild and thrive. The legal maneuver Kevin's divorce lawyer, a sharp and tenacious woman named Angela Carter, had already begun crafting a strategy. Rachel hadn't responded formally to the divorce papers, but Kevin knew she was delaying out of fear. Angela leaned across her desk, her piercing eyes locked onto Kevin's. "Rachel stands to lose a lot here," she said, "but we're going to keep things clean and fair on our end. It's important that this process shows you in the best light possible." "What about the house?" Kevin asked. "It's my name on the mortgage." Angela smirked. "That's working in your favor. She doesn't have much of a leg to stand on if she wants to contest ownership. We'll make sure the settlement reflects what's fair." As they discussed the details, Kevin realized he wasn't just fighting for what he had built. He was fighting for his dignity and future. The unexpected twist, meanwhile, Rachel had retreated to stay with her sister, Rebecca. It was Rebecca who encouraged Rachel to confront her actions and try to negotiate with Kevin. "You need to apologize," Rebecca said, her tone firm. "Not just for what you did, but for how you did it. Sneaking around with Jacob? That's low even for you." Rachel sighed, staring out the window. "I know I messed up," she admitted, "but Kevin won't forgive me. He's made that clear." "Then don't ask for forgiveness," Rebecca replied. "Ask for understanding. At least show him you're willing to make things right." But Rachel's attempt at reconciliation didn't go as planned. When she called Kevin, he didn't even let her finish her first sentence before cutting her off. "I don't want your excuses," Kevin said flatly. "I want you out of my life. You made your choice, Rachel. Now live with it." Her anger flared. "You think you're so righteous, Kevin," she snapped. "But you don't understand why I did what I did." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Kevin retorted. "You were selfish. You wanted to have it all, and you didn't care who got hurt in the process." Rachel hung up, seething, but Kevin was unfazed. He knew this was part of her pattern, deflecting blame instead of taking responsibility. Jacob's reckoning. As Kevin moved forward, Jacob's life was unraveling. Word of his betrayal had spread through their mutual friend group, leaving him ostracized and humiliated. His girlfriend, who had no idea about his involvement with Rachel, broke up with him in a fit of fury. "You're a liar and a cheat," she screamed during their final confrontation. "You don't deserve anyone's trust." Jacob's attempts to apologize fell flat. Alone and rejected, he began to grasp the true cost of his actions. One evening, Jacob showed up at Kevin's office unannounced. Kevin's assistant buzzed him through reluctantly, sensing the tension. "What do you want, Jacob?" Kevin asked, his voice cold. "I need to talk to you," Jacob said, his shoulders slumping. "I need to apologize." Kevin leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Go ahead," he said. Jacob hesitated before speaking. "I made a terrible mistake. I got caught up in something I couldn't control and I hurt you. I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Kevin stared at him for a long moment before replying. "You're only sorry because you're suffering the consequences. You didn't care about my feelings when you were sneaking around with Rachel." "I know," Jacob said, his voice cracking, "but I want to make amends." Kevin shook his head. Some things can't be undone, Jacob. I don't hate you, but I can't trust you either. Stay out of my life. Jacob left the office, his head hanging low. Building something new, Kevin's focus shifted to himself. He poured his energy into his career, taking on challenging projects that reignited his passion for his work. He started therapy to process the whirlwind of emotions he had been grappling with. His therapist, Dr. Lynette Porter, encouraged him to explore his own goals and dreams beyond the framework of his marriage. "What do you want for your future, Kevin?" she asked during one session. He thought for a moment before replying. "I want peace, and I want to feel like myself again." Dr. Porter smiled. "Then let's work on getting you there." Kevin also rekindled old friendships, finding support and camaraderie among people who truly cared about him. He began to see the value in surrounding himself with positivity and integrity. A chance encounter one afternoon, while running errands, Kevin bumped into an old acquaintance from college, Vanessa, a creative and spirited woman who had always marched to the beat of her own drum. "Kevin?" she said, her face lighting up with recognition. "Vanessa, it's been ages," he replied, surprised but genuinely happy to see her. They caught up over coffee, reminiscing about old times and sharing updates on their lives. Kevin found himself laughing more than he had in months, drawn to Vanessa's warmth and authenticity. As they parted ways, Vanessa said, "Let's not wait another decade to catch up. Call me sometime." Kevin smiled, realizing that for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful about the future. Kevin stepped into a new chapter of his life with a mix of determination and uncertainty. His chance meeting with Vanessa had sparked something he hadn't felt in years, a connection that wasn't weighed down by betrayal or heartbreak. As he moved forward, Kevin focused on rebuilding not just his life but also his sense of self-worth. The ripple effect. Rachel, on the other hand, found herself facing the aftermath of her decisions. With the divorce proceedings in full swing, her financial stability became a pressing concern. Kevin's lawyer had been meticulous, ensuring that Rachel couldn't manipulate the settlement to her advantage. "You're pushing me into a corner," Rachel accused Kevin during one of their mediated sessions. "I'm giving you exactly what you deserve," Kevin replied calmly. Her bitterness grew as she realized how much her actions had cost her. She had burned bridges with Kevin, alienated herself from their mutual friends, and discovered that Jacob's promises were nothing more than empty words. Jacob had drifted away, overwhelmed by his own problems, leaving Rachel to pick up the pieces alone. A new connection. Kevin's friendship with Vanessa deepened as they spent more time together. What began as casual coffee dates evolved into longer conversations, shared dinners, and moments of vulnerability. Vanessa's candid nature was refreshing. She didn't shy away from discussing her own challenges, which helped Kevin feel more at ease sharing his story. One evening, as they walked along a quiet street lined with glowing lampposts, Vanessa stopped and turned to Kevin. "You know, you're a lot stronger than you give yourself credit for," she said, her eyes warm and sincere. Kevin smiled, though a hint of doubt lingered. "I don't always feel that way." "Then let me remind you," Vanessa replied. "You didn't just survive what happened, you're thriving. That's not easy." Her words stuck with Kevin, bolstering his resolve to keep moving forward. Rachel's desperation. Meanwhile, Rachel's life took a darker turn. She realized that her choices had left her isolated and vulnerable. She reached out to her sister, hoping for support, but their conversation didn't go as planned. "Rachel, I love you, but you made your bed," her sister said bluntly. "You betrayed Kevin, and now you're facing the consequences." Rachel bristled. "I didn't expect you to judge me." "I'm not judging," her sister replied. "I'm just telling you the truth. If you want to fix your life, you need to take responsibility for your actions." For the first time, Rachel felt the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. She began to question whether she could ever regain the life she had lost. The turning point. One day, Rachel showed up at Kevin's doorstep unannounced. She looked worn and defeated, a stark contrast to the confident woman he had once known. "What do you want, Rachel?" Kevin asked, his tone guarded. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. Please, just hear me out." Against his better judgment, Kevin stepped aside and let her in. They sat in the living room, the air heavy with tension. Rachel clasped her hands together, struggling to find the right words. "I messed up," she finally said. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. For everything." Kevin stared at her, his expression unreadable. "Why now?" "Because I've lost everything," Rachel admitted. "And it's my fault. I wish I could undo it all." Kevin sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Rachel, I don't hate you, but I can't forget what you did. You broke something that can't be fixed." Tears welled in Rachel's eyes, but she nodded. "I understand. I just needed to say it." As she left, Kevin felt a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and closure. A new path that evening, Kevin shared the encounter with Vanessa over dinner. "Do you regret letting her in?" Vanessa asked, her eyes searching his face. "No," Kevin replied after a moment. "It gave me the closure I didn't realize I needed." Vanessa smiled. "That's good. It means you're really ready to move forward." Kevin reached across the table, taking her hand. "And I'm glad I have someone like you to move forward with." Vanessa's cheeks flushed, and she squeezed his hand gently. The feelings mutual. As they left the restaurant, Kevin felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just rebuilding his life, he was creating something better. Kevin's life continued to evolve as he focused on building something meaningful. His growing bond with Vanessa became a cornerstone of his new journey, offering him hope and stability. At the same time, he worked hard to rebuild his professional and personal confidence. The choices Rachel had made were now firmly in the past, but their echoes lingered, casting shadows he was determined to overcome. A fresh start. Vanessa encouraged Kevin to channel his experiences into something constructive. "You've been through so much," she told him one evening as they sat together in his living room. "Why not share your story? Could inspire others." Kevin was skeptical at first. The idea of putting his private pain on display felt daunting. However, Vanessa's belief in him was infectious. He began journaling, pouring his emotions onto the page. What started as a therapeutic exercise soon turned into something more: a manuscript detailing his journey of betrayal, loss, and recovery. One day, Vanessa read a draft and smiled. "This is incredible, Kevin. You're not just telling your story, you're giving people hope." Her words spurred Kevin to pursue publishing. With her support, he approached a local literary agent who immediately saw the potential in Kevin's story. "This is raw and real," the agent said. "Readers are going to connect with this on a deep level." Kevin signed the contract, taking the first step toward sharing his journey with the world. Rachel's life, meanwhile, spiraled further into chaos. With her finances dwindling and her relationships fractured, she found herself confronting the reality of her choices. She reached out to old friends, but their responses were lukewarm at best. The gossip surrounding her affair and its aftermath had left her socially ostracized. One evening, she sat alone in her small apartment, scrolling through social media. A post caught her eye, a glowing review of Kevin's upcoming book. An honest and heartfelt account of betrayal and resilience, the reviewer wrote. A must-read for anyone seeking inspiration after heartbreak. Rachel's stomach churned. She had thought she was done facing the consequences of her actions. But now it seemed Kevin's story was going to bring everything back into the spotlight. The book launch. The day of Kevin's book launch arrived, and the event was packed with supporters, readers, and curious onlookers. Vanessa stood by Kevin's side, her pride evident as he signed copies and answered questions from attendees. "What inspired you to share your story?" a reporter asked him. Kevin paused, choosing his words carefully. "I wanted to show that even in the face of betrayal, it's possible to heal and find happiness again. It's not about revenge. It's about rediscovering your worth." As the event wound down, Kevin spotted a familiar face lingering near the entrance. Rachel. An unexpected encounter. Kevin's heart sank. He wasn't sure why she was there, but he knew ignoring her wouldn't make her go away. With Vanessa's hand on his shoulder for reassurance, he approached Rachel. "Why are you here?" he asked, keeping his tone neutral. Rachel looked down, fidgeting with the strap of her purse. "I read about your book. I wanted to see how you're doing." Kevin raised an eyebrow. "I'm doing well, Rachel. Better than I've been in a long time." "I'm glad," she said softly. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know I'm sorry." Kevin studied her for a moment. "Rachel, I've moved on. I hope you can find a way to do the same." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she nodded. "I'll try." As Rachel left, Vanessa joined Kevin. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," he said with a small smile. "For the first time, I really am." Moving forward, Kevin's book became a success, resonating with readers who found solace and strength in his story. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had led him to a place of peace and fulfillment. Vanessa remained a constant source of joy and support. Together, they began planning a future built on mutual respect and shared dreams. One evening, as they watched the sunset from a hill overlooking the city, Vanessa leaned her head on Kevin's shoulder. "You've come so far," she said. "I'm proud of you." Kevin wrapped an arm around her, his heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you." For the first time in years, Kevin felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be, standing strong with the promise of a brighter tomorrow.